This is the third, also the last video in the series addressing fundamentals of lesson planning, principles of lesson planning. There are three main principles of lesson planning, namely aims, variety, and flexibility, which will be respectively presented in this lecture. Think about the following questions. What do aims, variety, and flexibility of a lesson mean to you? Why do the teacher need to bring variety and flexibility into his or her lesson? What makes an aim realistic? And list some ways in which the teacher can provide variety, flexibility in a lesson. One of the main principles of planning is establishing a clear aim for your lesson. It is important that aims are realistic. If the subject is too difficult for the students, then they become frustrated and lose motivation. However, if the subject is too easy, the students may become bored. Bored and frustrated students can often cause discipline problems. So, it is important when planning to think about your particular class. You may find it useful to bear these points in mind. What do the students know already? If you are planning to introduce completely new language items, allow more time than if you are revising or extending a topic the class are already familiar with. What do the students need to know? If the students are studying for an exam, for example, then you may need to focus on different fields and language than for a general English class. Do your aims suit that need? What do you do with students in their previous class? How well do the class work together? How motivated are the students? All these factors are important when deciding realistic aims for your class. Another important principle of lesson planning is variety. Variety means involving students in a number of activities of different types and where possible introducing them to a wide selection of materials. It means planning so that learning is interesting and never monotonous for the students. Pairing or grouping is one aspect of the class that can be varied, moving students from whole class to small group or pair activities. Teacher-centered activities can alternate with activities where students are more active and responsible. Skills can be alternated depending on course goals. Move from a receptive listening exercise to a productive speaking exercise, for example, or from an intense test situation to a relaxing, low-pressure game. Both the language teaching point and the topic may change from one activity to another too. There is a certain need for variety in classroom activities and teacher behavior as an antidote to student and teacher boredom. This means that when teachers plan a lesson, they build in changes of activity and a variety of exercises. It may well be that the lesson has an overall theme, but within that theme, the students do different things. What is being sought for is a confidence-inspiring coherence lit up by variety and interest. The same principles apply to a sequence of lessons stretching, for example, over 2 weeks or a month. Once again, students will want to see a coherent pattern of progress and topic linking so that there is a connection between the lessons and so that they can perceive some overall aims and objectives. Most find this preferable to a series of one-off lessons. However, two dangers may prejudice the success of a sequence of lessons. The first is predictability and the second is sameness. Despite the need for coherence, teachers must remember that if students know exactly what to expect, they are likely to be less motivated than if their curiosity is aroused. In the same way, they may feel less enthusiastic about today's lesson if it starts with exactly the same kind of activity as yesterday's lesson. An ideal 2-week sequence has threads running through it which are based on a topic or topics. During the 2 weeks, all 4 skills will be covered appropriately. During the 2 weeks, the language being taught will happen in a logical sequence. Most importantly of all, there will be a range of activities which bring variety and interest to the learning process. Also, it's important to remember to apply the principle of variety to a series of lessons too. If one day has been spent on accuracy-oriented practice activities, add variety by planning some fluency-oriented communication activities the next day. Variety will not only keep the class lively, but also meet student needs better, since students bring such a range of learning styles to the class. Variety also contributes to pace. The slow learner who can't progress through material very quickly, especially, variety is the best way to give at least an impression of a fast pace. The last fundamental principle of lesson planning is flexibility. Flexibility comes into play when dealing with a plan in the classroom. For some reasons, what the teacher has planned may not be suitable for that class on that particular day. The flexible teacher will be able to change the plan in such a situation. Flexibility is the characteristic we expect from genuinely adaptable teachers. The teacher who believes in variety will have to be flexible because the only way to provide variety is to use a number of teaching strategies and activities. There are a number of reasons why we may need to modify our proposal or action once a lesson is taking place. Magic moments. Some of the most affecting moments in language lessons happen when a conversation develops unexpectedly or when a topic produces a level of interest in our students which we had not predicted. The occurrence of such magic moments helps to provide and sustain a group's motivation. We have to recognize them when they come along and then take a judgment about whether to allow them to develop, rather than denying them because they do not fit into our plan. Sensible diversion. Another reason for diversion from our original plan is when something happens which we simply cannot ignore, whether this is a surprising student reaction to a reading test or the sudden announcement that someone is getting married. In the case of opportunistic teaching, we take the opportunity to teach language that has suddenly come up. Similarly, something might occur to us in terms of topic or in terms of a language connection which we suddenly want to develop on the spot. Unforeseen problems. However well we plan, unforeseen problems often crop up. Some students may find an activity that we thought interesting incredibly boring. An activity may take more or less time than we anticipated. It is possible that something we thought would be fairly simple for our students turns out to be very difficult, or vice versa. We may have planned an activity based on the number of students we expected to turn up, only to find that some of them are absent. Occasionally, we find that students have already come across material or topics we take into class, and our common sense tells us that it would be unwise to carry on. In any of the mentioned scenarios, it would be almost impossible to carry on with our plan as if nothing had happened. If an activity finishes quickly, we have to find something else to fill the time. If students cannot do what we are asking of them, we will have to modify what we are asking of them. If some students, but not all, have already finished an activity, we cannot just leave those students to get bored. It is possible to anticipate potential problems in the class and to plan strategies to deal with them. But however well we do this, things will still happen that surprise us, and which, therefore, cause us to move away from our plan, whether this is a temporary or permanent state of affairs. Written plans are not just proposals for future action. They are also records of what has taken place. Thus, when we are in the middle of a sequence of lessons, we can look back at what we have done in order to decide what to do next. Since we may have to modify our lessons depending on student reactions, we need to keep a record of how successful certain activities were to aid our memory. A record of lessons can also help colleagues if and when they have to teach for us when we are absent. Careful planning is very important. The teachers need to be able to adapt their plan during the lesson to suit the circumstances. This is something that becomes easier with experience, but in the planning stage, it is often a good idea to consider extra optional and alternative exercises. Then, if your material runs short, or you think the class might not respond well to a particular activity, you have something to fall back on. Similarly, teachers need to be aware of what is happening in and around the class. Students may raise interesting points and discussion could provide unexpected opportunities for language work and practice. The teacher needs to be flexible enough to be able to leave the plan if such opportunities arise. Now, imagine your journey again. If the road ahead becomes blocked, it's no good trying to carry on. You have to find a different route. In this lesson, we've talked about 3 fundamental principles of lesson planning. Can you name them? Hopefully, you have the same answer as follows: aims, variety, and flexibility. Thank you for watching.